Seems like there's interest from RB Leipzig. Seems like there's serious interest from Southampton.
I think there's going to be a lot of twists and turns.
Is it Leeds United win or bust?
I think...
Hello guys, welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled. Just me and Gab with you this week because we've got a whole set of really exciting midweek championship fixtures to look forward to. We've got a few big talking points to cover as well, Gab, and I think we should start with probably the biggest one at the moment, story around Danny Rohl and Sheffield Wednesday, because all the noise is coming out of Wednesday, especially with the issues that they've had paying players that have seemingly now been resolved. Seems like there's interest from RB Leipzig, seems like there's serious interest from Southampton. Feels like it could be the end of the road of that particular relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the romanticist in me really likes the connection that Danny Rohl has built at Sheffield Wednesday, and there's part of me that wants him to try and build something there. But it feels like any bit of hope for Sheffield Wednesday that they get under Dayfon Chansiri's ownership can only ever be a false dawn rather than a sign of things to come, because any slight shift in or significant shift even in results, in on-field performances, it's unsustainable because of these financial issues, because of the mismanagement of the club from Dayfon Chansiri. So Chansiri's got to sell up before Sheffield Wednesday can make real progress in terms of the long-term picture. And I don't think that they're, as a club, compatible with Danny Rohl's ambitions, and therefore, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him. It would surprise me if he stayed at Sheffield Wednesday, to put it that way.
You've spoken very, very highly of him in the past. I think you've spoken of him as potentially a future Champions League winning manager. You rate him that highly. Does Southampton feel like potentially the right next move for him? Or I think I'd rather see him go to a top-level German club. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I certainly think Rohl would be a wonderful appointment for Southampton. I think he would make a massive difference to them in terms of their chances of not only winning promotion from the Championship after coming down, but also possibly staying and being much more competitive in the Premier League. On the other hand, yes, I can see how Danny Rohl might feel like he's got a better chance of making waves by going to maybe a more ambitious club in Germany that feels like they can challenge the top, because I do think he could achieve something big.
And we have to talk about Southampton now, don't we? We get to talk about Southampton again, having been relegated, the earliest team ever to be relegated from the Premier League. Obviously, a disastrous season after seeing them win the playoffs last year. Ivan Juric sacked now, so that's why we're talking about them potentially appointing a new manager. They've said they were looking a little bit at Frank Lampard as well. Can't see that one happening at all at this stage. A bit of a strange link for me. Can you give some hope for Southampton fans? I mean, next season's going to be more positive. Are they more likely to be a Luton, or are they more likely to be a Sheffield United, Gab?
I think it's very early to say, because I think it's very easy, isn't it, Simon, to look at a team that's looked gutless this season, that's looked so easy to play against in the Premier League, and say, yeah, they could struggle again in the Championship like Luton have. However, my experience, and I don't know about you, Simon, but I often feel like, we sometimes find ourselves saying these things about relegated Premier League clubs, and then you get the right manager in, you make some good signings. Some of the players that you spent a lot of money on relative to this level end up actually being better than you'd think. Like, for example, Vinicius Souza is one of the best midfielders in the Championship at Sheffield United. Fans were hounding him out the door, in the summer. So that shows how quickly things can change with the right coaching and with the right recruitment. So I think depending on who Southampton appoint, I think that's going to be crucial. I certainly would see them being closer to the top than the bottom next season. But again, I think it depends on so many factors, doesn't it?
It's certainly early to be talking about next season. We've still got 6 massive games to go in the Championship. I just want to touch on, Adam Armstrong seems like that perfect player for the Championship. We saw what he did for Southampton in their promotion season. Again, he struggled to do it in the Premier League, but it doesn't mean he's not going to be in the running for the Golden Boot next season if he stays at Southampton. He's proven he's a really good goal scorer at this level. So we'll have to wait and see on Southampton. Have to keep an eye on Danny Rohl as well. But it is time for us to preview a couple of games from tonight and tomorrow. What a fixture list we've got this midweek, Gab. And I think we should start with Middlesbrough versus Leeds. Leeds obviously dropping yet more points. 1-1 with Luton at the weekend. Borough 5 wins out of 7. Leeds now 1 win in 6, down to 3rd. What on earth's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mixed, isn't it? Because I think for Leeds, they did change the goalkeeper, which I do think is a positive for Leeds at this stage. I didn't know if Daniel Farke was going to do that, so I do think that improves their chances. However, I look at parts of their performance away at Luton Town, and the lack of creativity definitely worries me. I understand that it is going to be difficult in terms of going to Kenilworth Road at this stage of the season, but I look at some of their better like the goal from Dan James. It felt like Leeds last season, where they're giving the ball to individuals and asking people to create something out of nothing. They're giving the ball to Manor Solomon and asking him to get across into the box. And actually, there's a few times looking at the extended highlights of that game where even in their attacking moments, the movement is very static. Well, there's no movement from other players off the ball, and that's not something that I've associated with Leeds for much of this season. So a little bit of a worry for me that they've become a little bit more characteristic of last season's side that was reliant on individuals, which would worry me because I don't think this season's individual quality is actually as high as last year's. So that's a bit of a concern that I have for Leeds going into the last 6 games.
With this kind of run of form and this really, really tricky away fixture, given Middlesbrough's form, is it Leeds United win or bust? What do you reckon?
Leeds United win or bust? I think there's going to be a lot of twists and turns. I think the fact Sheffield United lost 1-0 at Oxford on Saturday certainly helps Leeds. So actually they've gained a point on Sheffield United, which isn't. So it's not the end of the world for Leeds. A draw at Luton, which was obviously going to be more difficult playing Luton at this stage of the season than it would have been a couple of months ago. So no, I don't think I can go win or bust, because I know that's an attractive title of the video, but I probably wouldn't go quite that far. But it does feel like a significant game as well, doesn't it? Because for 1 win in 6, you can't allow that run to go on for much longer if you've got serious ambitions of top 2.
There's going to be some more twists and turns of that, we know for certain. Middlesbrough, really good form. I mean, back into the playoffs. I think it's 3 wins out of 4 for them. They're on a good little run of form. We've talked about their underlying data all season, Gab. We've talked about their attacking creativity. We've talked about the fact that they should be in the playoffs and they should be in the top 6. Now they are. Are they going to stay there?
I have no idea, Simon. I've given up trying to guess what's happening with Middlesbrough, Simon. It feels like every time we've had an angle on Middlesbrough, it's turned out to be completely wrong. I think for much of the first half of the season, we're thinking they could almost come into the top 2 conversation because of this attractive shot data and the rate of creativity and how good they are at their best. And then early in the second half of the season, we saw a massive drop-off where you're kind of questioning the spine of this team and whether they've got the intangibles required to find that sort of that consistency to deliver. And then, once there was this conversation about, is Michael Carrick going to go and are they going to appoint another manager? And there's that seemed to get to quite an advanced stage at one point. And then since Borough, whether they did a U-turn on Michael Carrick or whether or whatever, certainly there's been a massive change and they've had this brilliant run. So yeah, I think it's very difficult to know quite what to expect. But the one thing that I have been impressed with Middlesbrough is Tommy Conway. Lovely finish last time out.
And Camp-esque, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely brilliant finish. So that's a real positive to take into the business end. Right.
We've got to nail down a score prediction for this one. I think there's got to be goals. I think there was the 4-3, wasn't there, recently? Did Borough beat them in the League Cup as well at Ellen Road and scored a few goals really early in the season? I'm going to say 3-3, absolute thriller. I don't trust either defence. Not sure on either goalkeeper, but I love both attacks. So I'm going high-scoring draw, which I think Burnley and Sheffield United fans will be very pleased about. Gab, what about you?
I will go for 2-0 to Leeds United.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's
that confident they're going to bounce back.
I think they're due a result, Leeds.
Interesting stuff. It's not the only big game going on Tuesday night. We'll turn our attention to the bottom of the table because this is massive. Stoke versus Luton. Stoke on 43 points, currently sit in 20th. Luton 39 points, currently sits in 23rd. Stoke have won their last 2 home games and they are improving at the Bet365, and Luton unbeaten in 4, obviously drew with Leeds, as I've just mentioned last time out. Oh, really, really tough one to call. It feels like a win is going to be pretty seismic for either side in this one, Gab.
Yeah, certainly does. I think Stoke City can take real encouragement from their last 2 performances. They were very strong against QPR in their last home game, and then they went to Preston North End and probably had the better of that game. I'm really liking the left-sided relationship between Beijing Ho and Eric Bocat. I think that's a really nice combination. I love Million Manhoof on the right and some of his direct runs. So I'm actually kind of warming to Stoke, and it's funny because I feel sort of quite almost optimistic about a lot of the teams towards the bottom of the table, which is quite counterintuitive, isn't it? And then you've got Luton as well, who, just to kind of carry on that theme, since Matt Bloomfield came in on the 14th of January, outside the top 8, only Preston North End and Hull have conceded fewer goals than Luton Town. They've actually
stat, Gab, amazing.
I know, yeah. They don't call me Motti for no reason, so. I think Luton have recruited really well as well. Christ Makoso seems to have made a real difference to their defence. I think Telo Adsgaard with his third man runs to give it a bit more space to the likes of Morris and Adebayo. They get their wing backs very high at certain moments as well, and that's starting to come to fruition. So actually, again, I'm warming to Luton a little bit. So you have this weird position where there's 2 teams towards the bottom of the table that, as a team, as an entity, I'm actually feeling quite positive about them. And there's going to be one of these kind of teams that probably goes down, because that's where the Championship relegation battle is at the moment.
Isaiah Jones as well has been, I know he came for a decent fee, £5 million, but he scored some important goals lately. I just want to dig down a bit into Stoke's results, really, because as you mentioned, they probably had the better of it at Preston. They beat QPR. The 1-0 loss away at Millwall came from a penalty in the last minute, which for me was never a penalty, and they actually performed reasonably well in that game as well. Then they beat Blackburn 1-0. The 3-2 loss at Coventry came in the 96th minute, and they probably shouldn't have lost that game after a really good second-half performance. And before that, they drew 0-0 with Watford. So you're looking at kind of now an extended run of form under Mark Robins, where they have had the better, or at least been in a lot of these kind of tricky games. And I just think they're going to do enough. If you look, they've got Luton coming this midweek, then Cardiff at the weekend, then Sheffield Wednesday. I think there's enough in them to stay up this season. And I think Robbins' experience will be really crucial in that. Luton, I don't know. We talked about Luton, just as we did with Middlesbrough, so unpredictable, the Championship. Just as I think they're getting out of it, and I think their recent performances have been really good, I can just see them getting beaten in one of these games like this. So I'm going to say 1-0 Stoke. What about you, Gab?
I'm gonna have to sit on the fence and go 1-1. Do you know what? Because I think it's only 1 defeat in 6 for Luton, and that was away at Burnley, where Mark McGuinness was sent off 10 minutes in. So we can talk about Stoke being in good form in terms of performances, and I 100% agree with that. But actually, Luton only 1 defeat in 6, and arguably the Burnley game, you could strike a bit of a line through that one because it was a bit of a write-off 10 minutes in. So yeah, I'm kind of feeling positive weirdly about both teams. So I could only sit on the fence and go for a 1-1.
A result that helps both of them, but almost none of them at the same time, right? Because they both need the 3 points. The Wednesday night fixture we're going to have a look at is Oxford versus QPR. Oxford, obviously that massive win over Sheffield United this weekend. So important, 1-0. 45 points they're on in 18th. QPR a point above them in 16th. QPR are sinking slightly, aren't they? 0 wins in 7. And it feels like, as we've just mentioned with Stoke and Luton and Derby as well, even Plymouth getting a win, the bottom is surging, and it feels like the points total to stay up is gradually climbing higher.
Oh, absolutely. So I remember the 12-13 season where Peterborough United went down with 54 points and Wolves went down with 51. And whether we'll get, I think it might be 52 that's the tally required to stay up this season. Something around that, because I think it's going to be a very high tally, because I don't see anyone in the bottom 10 that I think is going to plummet. So I think the demands, if you like, is going to be driven up and up and up, and therefore I think you are going to be looking at a 50 plus points total required to stay up. And that's where I think QPR do have the capacity to be drawn in, even though they responded so well to a poor start to the season. Once they got a few players back from injury, they've actually risen up the table. And even at one point, people were mentioning the playoff word. But and then since then, they've kind of dropped off a lot. So I do think that, if you're a plummeter that's out of form, I don't think you're entirely safe. And similarly, with Oxford United, they'd won 1-11 before beating Sheffield United, which was a huge result for Gary Rowett's side. I still think Oxford have got a lot of work to do to make sure that they get the points that they need, because I don't think, even if Oxford drew every game between now and the end of the season, that would only get them to 51 points. And I don't know that that's going to be enough to stay up.
Really tough, isn't it, at the bottom? And the reason I'm concerned about QPR is that they're not going to roll the dice in terms of managerial change, whereas I'm just looking at the bottom half of the table now. I think they've all made a managerial change. Is anyone going to roll the dice, though?
Because I don't know if there's anyone that would roll the dice in the bottom 10 at the moment, because I think that I imagine that all of them are kind of happy with their manager. It's just whether the results sort of go for them. I don't think there's any teams that I could think of that would say, we don't want the manager that we've got in charge, which is a really unusual situation, but I think that might be true,
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I look at QPR like everyone else has pressed the panic button, and especially in terms of Oxford, seen a real boost in points over that spell we talked about with Gary Rowett going on that unbeaten run. Stoke have improved under Robbins. Derby have done really well under Eustace. Luton is starting to come together for Bloomfield now. Even Plymouth, that change has kind of worked, and they're getting a few wins on the board. I'm concerned for QPR in this one. I think if they lose, it's panic mode for them, I think, with 5 games to go. Should we get a score prediction for Oxford QPR? I'll let you go first, Gab.
I will go for 1-0 to Oxford United.
Exactly what I was going to say. I'm going to say 1-0 as well. I think that'll be a really good result for Rowett moving forward. So they're the midweek games we've covered there. I can't wait to see what happens. Such an exciting time of the season. We're just going to do a little throw forward to Burnley Norwich on Friday night. As we speak, Gab,
Connor Roberts throw forward, so.
As we speak, Burnley top of the league. Has your mind changed for the title winner after a very turbulent weekend?
I'm leaning towards Burnley, just because I think they've been. I think they it was a scrappy victory for themselves at the CBS. They relied on Jayden Anthony. Normally it's been Marcus Edwards that has kind of got them going in terms of the attacking side of their game. Jayden Anthony with some clinical finishes, a couple of scrappy goals, capitalising on a bit of an error from Brad Collins. It's just it's that solidity from Burnley that I'm thinking, with question marks over Leeds at this moment, and Sheffield United losing at Oxford, of course, as well. I'm leaning a bit more towards Burnley at the moment, but it's so tough to call, and I think a very good team's going to miss out on automatic promotion. That's for sure.
It's almost with Burnley. The reason I've become more and more convinced is, even though I think there's better footballing teams for sure. I think Sheffield United and Leeds at their best are way better than Burnley. You don't go 27 games unbeaten in the Championship if you've not got something about you. And what I saw at CBS on Saturday was a team that will do anything to win. They'll do all of the dark arts. The ball was in play for 47 minutes at the CBS. It was honestly the most disgusting way to win a football match. But that, for me, is the sign of champions. They can get the job done. I see very little risk in thinking Burnley can win the title. I don't see them losing from now until the end of the season, and that includes a home game against Sheffield United, where I think if they want to sit out and get a draw, they will get that job done, depending on the position they find themselves in at that moment in time. So as Leeds and Sheffield United have wobbled, it's very easy to say, I didn't see this coming, but I don't think there's much risk with Burnley. You know what you're going to get, and I don't think they'll shrink away from any of the away games they've got coming up. They don't concede goals. They're so tough to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Derby away could be a bit of a, a banana skin for them. But if I look at their other away games, I think they're against sides that I would probably fancy them to beat. So I think, Yeah, it might be a draw at Derby and possibly against Sheffield United, but I could easily see them maybe drawing 2 and winning the other 4 because of that solidity and reliability.
I think Derby, though, it might suit them because Derby are also kind of a big back three physical team, like to get the ball forward quite directly to Yates. Obviously, Harness doing really well working off him at the minute. I think Burnley have everything in their locker to deal with that, whereas maybe a Leeds or a Sheffield United might struggle, or even Coventry went to Pride Park and lost quite convincingly because they just couldn't quite deal with that style of play. I don't see many teams being able to do Burnley. I can't believe I'm saying this because I didn't see it coming at the start of the season. I didn't see it coming a few weeks ago, but that's why we love the Championship so much. I presume we're both backing them to beat Norwich on Friday night.
On Friday night, I think, I think so. I think 2-0 to Burnley.
Yeah, should be a routine home win for me as well. I'll go for a 1-0 or something like that. Right, Gab, time for your Championship treble, and this is for the weekend, as we don't have time to do it for the midweeks. For Saturday 3pms, please.
Yeah, I think Luton Town beat Blackburn Rovers. I think Blackburn are one of the weakest sides in the Championship at the moment, with some question marks off the field. And I'm kind of going for a similar theme to back against Sheffield Wednesday, just because of delayed payments to player wages, and the fact that they're out of the playoff scramble means that I think that they're going to be cannon fodder for teams down the bottom that just need to get those victories to steer themselves clear to safety. So I think that's a great opportunity for Oxford at Hillsborough to maybe pick up all 3 points. And I'm also going to go with Sunderland to beat Swansea City, because it's not going to be a Gabs Championship treble without Sunderland being in it.
I've been impressed with Sunderland last couple of weeks. I think I was worried about them kind of being in this purgatory. They've seemed to have gone into kind of almost tournament football playoff mode already, getting a 1-0, so kind of Lefay's back as well, which is a big boost for them. Yeah. I can see them picking up a few wins and maybe closing the gap on that top 3 before the season's end. So I'm more positive on Sunderland than I have been in recent weeks. I don't know about you, Gab.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think they possibly needed to ride their luck a little bit at West Brom. I think that's a game that could have easily been a draw. But yeah, I think Regis Libris has done a fantastic job, and I think getting Enzo Lefay fit in the run-in and getting him ready for the playoffs could be a huge difference maker for them.
Absolutely, and nice link there, because I think your corner of concern is West Bromwich Albion, right?
Yeah, I'm a little bit apprehensive about them just based on their form. I think back-to-back defeats for West Brom, no wins in 4. A little bit of a worry for me that, early in Tony Mowbray's reign, you felt like they had this ability in their locker to dish out a tonking. And I think that's something they've struggled to do a little bit more in recent weeks, where the goals haven't flowed quite as readily. I still think that they are creating chances with the likes of Carlin Grant and his link-up play with Mikey Johnston. They've obviously got Adam Armstrong there as well. But I'm a little bit concerned that West Brom might drop out of the top 6, especially with the form of Bristol City, who have won 3 of the last 6, and Middlesbrough as well.
Do you think they're going to lose? That's the game we didn't have time to cover, but Bristol City West Brom is massive for the playoff race, isn't it? Tuesday night. And you're going to go for Bristol City on that one? I
think I'm going to go for a draw for that one.
You're going to get splinters sat on that fence.
I know.
Unbelievable. A couple of other things I wanted to talk about today. Sure. The Golden Boot in the Championship, I'm finding very, very interesting indeed. Borja Signs, I think it's 2 goals in his last 20 appearances, still leads the way on 17 goals.
Streaky Signs.
Yes, sorry. Joel Pirro, 15 goals. This season, and he's not in the best of form either, actually, at the moment. He's not scored in his last 6 games. So, Gab, looking at the list of top scorers here, we've got Sargent on 14, Brownhill on 13, Major on 10, Isidore 12, Major on 12, Isidore 12, Conway 12. Going down, we've got the likes of Dan James and Hadji Wright on 11. Who's your money on for the Golden Boot? Because I think it's wide open.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like I don't think anyone's going to finish on 20 plus goals in the Championship this season, which feels quite unusual and certainly a far cry from the days where you had the likes of McCormick and Asombalonga and loads of players who at Rhodes who are scoring all the goals. It feels like it's gone away from poachers a little bit in the Championship, because The coaches in the Championship are a bit more tactically savvy and want more from their centre forwards, and that's taken away a little bit from maybe that sort of striker that's going all out for all the goals. And so I think as the game's evolved, I think the poachers have maybe suffered from that a little bit. And so, to go back to the question, I'd probably back Pirro to maybe bag top scorer or maybe share it with Signs. But again, I find it hard to say with much confidence that anyone's going to get to 20 goals.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a low bar, as you've kind of touched upon then. But I still feel, I don't think it'll be Signs or Pirro, and I don't know why I have that gut feeling. I still look at the strikers that are there to score goals, and I think it's few and far between on that list. But I'm looking at a Josh Sargent who's got 14, even Conway on 12. He might be a bit far back, but a player like that, even Isidore, just a striker that maybe Isidore does too much, I don't know. I would probably lean towards Sargent, but here's my outsider. Had you right. Of course I've got to back him. He is a striker for Coventry, having come through games against Burnley and Sheffield United, which haven't gone well. I'm hoping Sky Blues will get back to some level of form, and he is the striker that Frank Lampard really likes, and all he wants him to do is score goals.
Had you right.
He's quite a long way back. That injury's kind of cost him, but
I know because he missed much the first half of the season, didn't he, Si?
Yeah, so he's got 11 goals in 21 games this season, which does give him the best goals per 90 ratio in the Championship this season. Gab, out of the 3 Premier League teams expected to come down, Ipswich, Southampton, Leicester, could you give me the most likely to go straight back up and the most likely to have a bit of a stinker next season?
I think Ipswich, if they keep Kieran McKenna, I would make them the likeliest. If they don't, I'd probably put them on a similar level. Leicester and Southampton, I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about Leicester in terms of the financial issues that they've had and whether that impacts things. So I'd probably go with Leicester, depending on who but again, so much depends on who because for all 3 of them, we don't know who's going to be in the dugout, and that can dictate so much, can't it? Because if you're going to have a stinker, a lot of it depends on who the manager is. Like, remember Fulham coming down with Felix Magath, for instance, the ultimate disciplinarian. So I don't know. I think so much is going to depend on who the manager's in charge, and I think it's probably a bit early to say, but I appreciate the question.
I'm a little bit concerned about Leicester probably out of the 3, just because I'm not sure Ruud van Nistelrooy is going to stick around, and I think there are a few issues, as you say, with the finances at Leicester. I suppose this brings me on to another point though, which is how do we solve the 3 up, 3 down issue, which is happening and repeating itself at the moment, because obviously all 3 teams that are going to come back down, and they're going to be in a strong position potentially to go back up. We've seen Sheffield United and Burnley do well, and Luton kind of freak out this season, but it's very difficult for these Championship teams to close the gap on the parachute payments. And do we want to see a more serious change made?
I think yes is the answer to that. I think in the disparity of wealth in English football is definitely a massive issue that needs to be addressed. Whether it will be addressed, I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know if the people with the power in football have an interest in that, and so that's something I'm definitely worries me. In terms of, if I'm looking at it from the position of the clubs themselves, I think it's all about trying to find an edge. So in terms of clubs coming up from the Championship, staying there, historically it's been the Stoke effect, if you like, under Tony Pulis, where they had that very aggressive, being really hard to play against, and that gave them a massive edge. Moving on a few years, you would say Brighton and Brentford have been able to stabilise through being very data-driven. Bournemouth, for instance, you give them another example. They've had great coaches in Eddie Howe and Andoni Iraola. So I think that it's a variety of things. I think as clubs are maybe getting smarter, and so this data used to be something that was, unique to the smart clubs. Like Brentford were particularly smart because they were the ones who did the data. Now everyone does the data. It's become a mainstream thing. So I suppose clubs have got to try and find what's the next edge, what's the next thing that doesn't depend on money, that can give, that maybe other clubs on a more mainstream level haven't quite tapped into yet. I think that's going to be the secret to it.
Lovely stuff. Any final words, Gab, ahead of this championship midweek and this championship weekend?
I'm so excited by it all, Sam, because what I love about this season is that all three components of the table, whether it's the automatic promotion race, the playoff scramble, or the relegation dogfight, they're all completely up in the air, and that's how we want it. So we're going into the business end with so much uncertainty, and that's where the championship's at its best.
Absolutely. Best league in the world, and that's why we love covering it. Get in the comments down below, by the way, who you think's going to finish as the Championship's top goal scorer this season, because me and Gab, we're a bit confused by it all at this moment in time. As usual, we're just trying to have a guess at what's going to happen. But yeah, make sure you like and subscribe as well while you're down there in the comments. But that's all from us this week on the Sportsman Untitled. Next week, I believe we've got Ollie Man in from Sheffield United and Turfcast Burnley as well, as we look forward to that massive first versus second at the moment, massive game at the top of the Championship, Burnley versus Sheffield United on Easter Monday. So join us for that one, and we'll see you next week.